Mark Dork back again. Today, my friends, we're continuing my series on Qlik Application Automation with a little bit of a twist. This entire show is really dedicated to you enterprise architects out there because you have a skill, a background, an excellence, experience in something that I think is so important, it needed its own show. And that is your debugging skills. My friends, we're going to walk through a use case where we're trying to back our applications up out of our SaaS environment and put them out in GitHub. I walked through recently a blog where I showed in 3 easy steps how that could be done. I pick one application, I say export it, and I stick it out in GitHub. Easy breezy, right? Nothing, no harm there. Any choreographer was able to follow those steps to do that. Then I walked through a few bonus things where I wanted to show makers, ooh, you guys might think, well, why would you just have Dalton back up one application individually when you might be able to list all of the applications in a space for Dalton and back them all up to GitHub? While we're at it, why don't we go ahead and take all of our spaces, get all of the apps in all of our spaces, and back them all up to GitHub? And that all works great until it stops working. And one of the things that in this blog I had to call out was that you've got to take security into mind, because sometimes things will work in your space, your environment. And when you roll that package out, if you were to do what I showed you in my templates videos, where you could back up the JSON and then insert it somewhere else, you could run into problems. And that's what we're going to be looking to solve. There's some security issues that we need to worry about. It all started with, I'm going to do this workflow because what I don't want to do is right-click export on each of my apps individually, because there's times I get a little bit busy and I forget to do that. And I'd like to automate, for my peace of mind, all of those backups. But if I right-click on some objects, I do not have the permissions to export those things manually, and those same backups will not work automated either. And that's where your skill set is going to become important. So I'm going to show you the basic block, and I've taken out the GitHub stuff because we really don't care about that right now. That's not part of our problem that we need to solve. I list all my spaces, easy breezy. I don't have to do anything. I simply dragged that block right out of Qlik Cloud Services. And let me show you. So I've got list apps and I've got list spaces. And for this apps, it just says, hey, I want to select from the spaces and I want to get the item ID of what the space is. And then it will list all the apps that are in that space. Can't get any easier than that. And for exporting the app, what this did is says, hey, let's loop through these, which is going to happen automatically, and choose the item ID for that application. And it's going to export that then. And then in my article, I showed you a GitHub block that would take this and send it out to GitHub. But when I run this is the craziest thing. Turns out that in this specific tenant, the Qlik Dork is not the tenant admin. I am like any other user in this tenant. And I get this error that says you are not allowed to back that thing up. But it doesn't really explain why, other than saying you can't back that up. You don't have the ability to do that. All the other applications worked just fine though. Why can't I back this up? That's where your expertise comes into play. Our choreographer knows why we're trying to do this workflow. The maker understands exactly maybe what we want to do in the workflow, like understanding how to build this. You, my friends, are the ones that are going to figure out why doesn't that work in all cases. Your methodical ability to walk through and debug is what's going to pay off and help make this possible for us to solve this problem. So let's try to figure this thing out. So I'm going to delete this block, this remove, because we know why we know it's not working right now. And let's look at some of the others. What we can do is we can get the app information for this ID, and we're going to do the same thing. I want to take the app ID, and that's the one that I want to use to get the application information for. Now this is going to get me the app, the metadata, and some lineage. And now I'm going to have that. But how am I going to get to see that? Oh, I hear you screaming in the background, oh man, you've showed us output 1,000,000 times. Guess why I've showed you output 1,000,000 times? To set us up for this here. Wherever I drop the output block, whatever's directly above it is what it's going to default to. And it's going to say, hey, I'm going to get you that app information. And so let me go ahead and save this, and I'm going to run this. And you'll see it's going to output a whole bunch of things because it's going to go through all those apps. Do I really care about all those apps? Not really. I need to know this first one, and so I'm going to put a stop block in here to purposely stop it so that I do not get all apps. I don't want to iterate through all these. I need to debug that first app that was giving me an error, and then I want to stop. So let me save it now, and I'm going to run this again. That stop block can be your friend, just like the output is always your friend. And I get to see the info, and I get to see the metadata. Well, as I walk through this, you'll see that I've got info about some attributes. I've got some custom information. I've got privileges. Ding, 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 ding. Ooh, this first privilege says I could read. My second privilege, if I click on it, says export reduced. Reduced does not sound good to me. Now, if you don't particularly like to read through things this way, because especially in this create, I've got 8 permissions here, you can always come in here to toggle the view mode and make this more JSON-like. And now when you come down here, this is really important. This is the reason I showed it to you. If you watched my variables, you will recall that when I have a list item, which privileges is, I'm just going to see those one right after the other. If I have an object, then I will have a key and a value set of these things, and I would have this. And if I had a table, then I have a whole series of rows of these keys and values. And so if I toggle that view mode, I get to see what this really is, and this is important. So remember this, privileges is a list. Now, I know that I get read and export reduce. So I'm going to write that down. Now I've got that written down for me. What I want to do is I want to change this. And I want to get an application that I know will succeed because I want to know what the rights are, those permissions, when I do succeed. So instead of using this, let's delete that, I'm going to look up an app instead. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an application that I know I have access to. So I could go to the Qlik Cloud, I look for something either in my personal section, or I look for a category that I know I own and have permissions to. Well, I know I've got access to this AWS maintenance I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove this item ID. I don't want that application. And what I want to do is I want to get an application that I know I succeed on, so I see what that list of permission is in that case. I'm going to do a do lookup here, and I'm going to find an application that I know I own, and therefore I have the permissions to export it. And I've got to come scrolling way down through here. I'm going to select this app. So now I'm going to get the application information. It's going to output all of those permissions, and then of course I'm going to stop and ignore the fact I'm in a loop here. So let me save that and run that. And now what I care about is what that permissions list is and privileges that's different. And so I come down, I don't want to see this 1 to 10. Let me toggle my view mode again so that I can see these. And I see I've got read, update, delete, reload, export, duplicate, change owner, change space, export reduced, source. Well, the export is the one I'm looking for. I have the ability to export that one. I did not in that other application that I failed on. And I know that privileges is a list. Now, what could I do with that combination? Before I change my workflow, let's go ahead, we're going to delete this, and we're going to go back to, let me look at the items in that application list. I'm going to get that ID. I know I would normally fail here, but I'm going to remove this output block instead. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a conditional. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put a condition. And what condition am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for that get app information, and I'm looking for privileges. And what I need to do when I'm comparing now, I'm not comparing a value, I'm not comparing the type, I'm comparing, does the list contain, not a text. Privileges is not a text field, it is a list. I'm going to say, does the list contain the value export? And once I establish that, I have a yes block and a no block. Now, what would I do here? Well, if it does contain the ability to export, that's where normally I would go ahead and put my export app information, take that app information, put it out to GitHub. What I'm going to do instead is just do some output here. Just so that you could see how this conditional will work. I don't want to export the app information. What I do want to do though is I want to take the name of the app. So if I look at the attributes, I see I've got a name, and I can concatenate text here. So it's going to give me the application information, and I can say is allowed to export. And I'm going to do another output block down here. And I do not want all of the application information. All I want is that application name. And I'm going to concatenate down here. Cannot be exported. Okay, so I'm going to get the application information. I'm going to check that security condition. And then I can alternatively choose what I will do if it's yes, and I can alternatively choose what to do if it's a no. And I do not want this stop block anymore. I wouldn't normally need that. Now we know that that first one fails, so let's just first see if our blocks are correct. So if I run this now, Snowpipe cannot be exported. Ooh, that sounds exactly like what I wanted to do, right? Now I would come back and I would replace this block. Instead of using the outputs, I might replace these things. Or let's just see, make sure that all of them don't come back with a no and I'm checking the wrong thing. Makes sense? So again, our debugging skills at work here. I'm going to run this, and it's going to be going through here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click per block and then come back to output so that it will start showing me that output as it's going through there. And I'm seeing here, I get cannot, and it's going to go through here and continue to show me these one at a time as it's going through the loop. And then, oh, is allowed to export, is allowed to export, is allowed to export. And it goes through. And now I know I'm doing the right thing in my condition. So let's go ahead and stop that. And this is where I would come back now. I would remove this. I would go back to my building blocks. I would go to my Qlik Cloud Services. I would choose Export App. And then I would come back to my GitHub connector. And I would choose Create or Update File. And here's where now, normally I would have already had this information in there from my original blog post. Hopefully it all makes sense why I've made this video specifically targeting enterprise architects. Your background and skill set in debugging, methodically going through one thing at a time and trying to work around it is going to pay big dividends in any center of excellence around RPA space in general and around Qlik Application Automation. Hope you all have a great day.